Si la Fed haría bien, haría lo correcto en subir los tipos de interés en 50 puntos básicos, tal y como avanzó Jerome Powell, su presidente, en los últimos días. Nos vamos a preguntar también si podría invertirse dentro de poquito tiempo la curva de tipos y, por tanto, pronosticar una recesión. Lo vamos a hacer en los próximos minutos con la ayuda de Edward Moya, que es Senior Market Analyst de Oanda. Edward, thank you so much for being here in Negocios Televisión.
Thank you for having me.
Jerome Powell, the Fed chair, said the other day that the Fed could raise rates by more than 25 basis points in future meetings. Do you think that this would be the right move in the May meeting, for example?
It's long overdue. The Fed has been late in fighting inflation, and you're probably going to see that the Fed is not just going to raise rates by 50 basis points at the next meeting in May, but they're probably going to raise more aggressively in the coming meetings. I think that the Fed will raise rates at least at every meeting going forward, and you'll probably see two of them be supersized rate hikes.
In such scenario, Edward, do you think bond yields, for example, would go much higher?
We've seen quite the move higher in bond yields, and they're going to continue to rise. I think we're at a level right now where there will be a pause. The inflation is still going to go much higher, and that's going to test the Fed, and that's going to test markets. So you're probably looking at over the next couple of months, until we have a better idea as far as when the peak of inflation will be, that we could still see yields continue to rise, especially in the shorter end of the curve, which means the risks of inverting the curve are growing.
The yield curve has flattened, Edward. My question is if you have any estimation about when the yield curve could invert, for example?
Well, I think that right now you're probably looking at a scenario where the risks are growing that we could see an inversion at some point at the end of the year. The likelihood, though, that the economy will see a sustained recession is still very low. I think that there's still a lot of geopolitical risk, which is driving this latest round of inflationary fears. And depending on how the war in Ukraine plays out, will really dictate exactly how much further these pricing pressures will remain. So I think you're probably going to see that the economy is still fairly on solid footing, and that I think there are expectations that if we do have a recession, it won't be a severe one.
Speaking of the stock market, Edward, Wall Street is down this week, but last week it registered one of the best weeks in months for the stock market. What are stocks pricing in right now?
Well, right now, there's a lot of, I think, for investors, they're just trying to reposition themselves. I think you are seeing some investors go a little bit more defensive. They're going to consumer staples. Some are focusing their tech bets into some of the larger mega cap companies that are focused on cloud and security, and not necessarily your companies that have unsustainable growth forecasts. And I think you're seeing that the surge in treasury yields are really weighing on these companies that are not yet profitable. So you're probably going to continue to see that some of the FANG stocks, more specifically the Apples and Microsofts and Amazons and Googles, are going to lead the charge higher. But there are growing risks like the Facebooks and Netflix that these companies will probably continue to struggle, and that you're going to see, I think overall, there is going to be further pricing pressures on smaller cap companies, and those companies are going to struggle. They're going to have tough margins going forward. So you're looking at a very selective market. So I think a lot of investors are trying to reduce their exposure on companies that are going to be really struggling with these sudden surge that we've seen in treasury yields.
Edward, Joe Biden, the president of the United States, is traveling to Europe this week. He's traveling to Poland tomorrow. Do you believe anything he can say can have an effect on the market?
I think a lot of it has been priced in, and I think some of the message that has been telegraphed is that you're going to see the West try to deliver a united message against Russia, but it doesn't look like you're going to see an EU ban on Russian energy supplies. That would really cripple the European economy. I think you're going to see growing pressure, and I think there's going to be more of a